everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be the last of these favorites of the year of 2020 videos, and I'm going to talk about romance, nonfiction, and comics and graphic novels here because, you know, I do have a few of these favorites, but I just don't tend to read as much in these genres as I do in, you know, like fantasy and sci-fi. So before jumping into this, feel free to leave a superhero emoji in the comments to let me know that you're here. So we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll begin with the romance books. So the first book I'll talk about here is Would Like to Meet by Rachel Winters. So here we follow Evie, who is an assistant to this film agency. She essentially has to get this author to deliver the rom-com script that he promised. In order to do this, she goes on these meet-cutes to prove that, like, things that happen in rom-coms are real. She has to do this in order to save her job. So this was so hilarious and really charming. The meet-cutes in particular really made me laugh, especially there's one at a book club, which is hilarious, especially, like, you know, once you find out what kind of book club it is. I had a really great time with that part. Evie is really endearing and just wonderful. It's really nice to see her develop over the course of the book and, you know, start to stand up for herself more. I think I just, like, really rooted for this romance, definitely felt the chemistry between the characters. The side characters are fantastic as well. We've got, you know, some friends who are really supportive, so that's just great to see. And, you know, I think just in general, it's a really feel-good book. The next romance book I'll talk about is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. So the premise here is that Calla's mother moves them away from Alaska when she's just a baby. And so she kind of loses touch with her father, who is a bush pilot. And then years later, she gets a call that he has cancer. So she flies out to kind of reconcile with him and learn about herself along the way. So this was just so good. I mean, the romance here is just spectacular. It's, I think, like a bit of an enemies to lovers type romance, or rather, like, I don't know if they're necessarily enemies. They don't really get along at first. I think the setting is just wonderful. It's kind of like this small Alaska town, so, you know, you have a lot of really great scenery around, and I think it's just really well described. It just feels so cozy and quaint, I think. The characters are really great. I particularly enjoyed seeing Calla grow over the book. You know, she starts out being extremely materialistic. She kind of learns along the way that other things are much more important to life. I was really emotionally invested in the characters, and watching the romance develop is just so much fun. And I actually just read the sequel, and it's also really wonderful, and I just really highly recommend this series. So the last of the romance books I'll talk about is Beach Read by Emily Henry. Here we have two writers. We have Augustus, who is this literary fiction writer, and then we have January, who's a romance author. They're, you know, opposites, but they end up living next to each other in these beach houses, and both of them have writer's block. So they make a deal to try writing each other's genres. And, you know, she'll teach him how to do, like, rom-com moments, and he'll take her to interview former death cult members. So I thought this was a really great romance. It's definitely not as light as this cover implies, and I actually really liked how it touches on these heavier themes such as, you know, cancer, parental death, and affairs. I think both of our characters are kind of struggling things, but they're, you know, opposite sides of the same coin and work really well together. I liked how there's, like, this writer's block discussion and just seeing what they do to get out of it. I definitely felt the connection between the characters and thought that this was, like, a really realistic romance. January in particular was pretty funny and relatable. I really liked her relationship with her best friend. In general, we have some really great side characters, in particular with Gus. There's some pretty funny scenes here. There's one in particular that stands out. It's kind of like at a book club with some purse wine, and I remember that being, like, especially funny. I mean, there's definitely some funny moments, but there's also, like I said, these more serious discussions, and I really liked just how it kind of explores these in depth. A lot of the themes here are just like, don't be so quick to judge others. So I had a really great time with this. So those are all the romance books that I have to talk to you about, and then we'll switch quickly into the one nonfiction book that I have to talk to you about, and that's Olive, Mabel, and Me, Life and Adventures with Two Very Good Dogs by Andrew Cotter. When I reviewed this book, I kind of talked about, like, if you haven't seen the Olive and Mabel videos, I highly recommend you check them out because they're just, like, so wholesome and cheerful, and I feel like they've just brought so much joy to my life in this past year. So basically, Andrew Cotter is describing his life, obviously, you know, Olive and Mabel, these dogs, and just becoming internet stars. I think this was hilarious. He's really funny and witty on camera, and I thought that this translated really well to the written form. I think it's just great to learn more about him, and of course, Olive and Mabel. I also, like, you know, obviously it's dealing with the dogs and just, like, starting a YouTube channel and everything, but he also talks about hiking in Scotland, which I think was particularly interesting for me. It's fun to learn about, like, how the videos came about, and how, like, being internet famous can be strange at times. I thought this was pretty, you know, like, relatable and understandable. And it's also just great to learn more, like I said, about Olive and Mabel, especially with their differences and personalities. I think, you know, that it had a lot of really cute pictures as well, so that was always just great to see. So yeah, definitely recommend this book and checking out their videos. So we'll jump into the comics and graphic novels. The first one I'll talk about here is Book Love by Debbie Tung. So this is just a set of really adorable comics that very accurately depict the life and struggles of a bookworm. So I feel like, you know, watching BookTube, I think a lot of people will find this extremely relatable and highly amusing. I think, you know, for me, I definitely related to a lot of these things. There's topics like, you know, not being able to resist buying new books, which of course, you know, I struggle with a bit. I think there's, you know, there's some fun comics about, like, the struggle of having to travel and, like, how many books do you pack? Because you certainly do not want to run out of books on a trip. So, you know, I love that. But there's also fun things like social media, including BookTube. So, yeah, I just really love this. I think the illustration style is really cute and charming. So I feel like, you know, a lot of book lovers will really love this. The next book I'll talk about is Injustice: Gods Among Us, Year 1. So this is the complete collection. This is written by Tom Taylor. So this is kind of like, it ties in with the video game series, but the premise here is that the Joker essentially tricks Superman into killing Lois Lane, and he ends up destroying Metropolis. So Superman kind of, like, goes off the deep end, because obviously this is very upsetting, and he starts, like, actually meddling in wars and the affairs of countries. Batman and others do not agree, and so they're on opposing sides. So I thought this was really cool. Like, I very much enjoyed seeing how, you know, a hero can fall and how superheroes can really, like, question which side they're on. It is definitely dark and brutal at times. Like, it's not super happy. No heroes are really safe. I think the writing is really engaging. The artwork in particular is pretty great. There's also, like, a brief appearance by the Kraken in here, so of course I love that. Like I said, like, I think it's a really interesting idea to explore what happens, you know, when Superman loses his innate goodness and kind of goes off the deep end. So, you know, I think there's a lot of really interesting conflicts here with not only, like, which side do people choose to support, either Superman or Batman, but, like, also just, you know, people questioning if they chose correctly. So, would definitely recommend this one. The next book I'll talk about is Stranger Planet by Nathan W. Pyle. So this is just a really cute collection of comics, and it's basically like aliens encountering things like melodies, traditions, pets, and unpredictable behavior, fear, pain, and geography. So, you know, some of these are comics from Instagram, but some of them are new for this collection. It's, you know, really cute. I love this art style. It's just absolutely adorable. A lot of these are pretty short, so it's just, you know, like a couple of panels to convey the story. So it's really quick to read and just, like, super cheerful. I think, you know, it's generally really funny, and it's definitely, like, a mood brightener. And I just love seeing how, like, the aliens refer to things, like everyday things. Like, a burrito is swaddled sustenance. A car is a roll machine. A bus is a group roll machine. And then, like, a hockey puck is a slick slap slappy. So yeah, just, like, super cute things like that. And I just really adore these comics, and would recommend both this, and if you haven't read the other one, which was Strange Planet, which was obviously, like, another collection of these comics, like, definitely pick both of these up. The next book I'll talk about is Fables, and this is the Deluxe Edition, Book 1, and this is written by Bill Willingham. We have these magical fairy tale beings who are exiled in New York in this place called Fabletown, and they're trying to just, like, you know, be normal and blend in. We have Snow White's sister, Rose Red, who is apparently murdered, so Bigby, who is the big bad wolf, must investigate. And then that's like the first story, I guess, and then in the second part, in upstate New York, where the non-human passing fables live, there's a revolution going on. I just loved this so much. Like, I've talked about this multiple times on my channel, how I really enjoy any sort of, like, fairy tale retelling. This was definitely, like, an interesting take on things. I think, you know, I really wanted to try it, first of all, because it is, I think, the inspiration behind the Wolf Among Us game. And I just loved all of these different fairy tale creatures. You know, we have I guess, more standard fairy tale creatures like Snow White, but we also have like Bluebeard and like the Kipling creatures. It's definitely a darker tale. We've got like sex and violence, but I think it's just really cool to see this sort of material explored in like a more mature context. It's like the first part, Rose Red's apparent murder. I think that was a really interesting mystery, and in the second part, I think just the general story was cool, and we get to learn more about like the adversary and why these fairy tale beings were forced to flee in the first place. I really liked the real world versions of these people. Like, you know, Prince Charming is not so charming and is, you know, kind of a jerk. There's a lot of really interesting relationships between people like Snow White and Rose Red, and then of course like Bigby and the Three Little Pigs. I really liked the art style. Definitely a series I want to keep going with. I actually just bought the second deluxe edition, so I will be continuing with this shortly. So the last book I'll talk about today is Solutions and Other Problems by Allie Brosh. So this is just such a great collection. We've got comics about silly things like animals and ridiculous situations, but then we also have some more serious topics like, you know, her health, divorce, loneliness, and her sister's death. So I just thought this was so fantastic. I really love this art style. Like, it is so silly and never fails to make me laugh. I think the comedic timing in particular is really fantastic. I just really connect with it, and it, like this and the other collection, Hyperbole and a Half, which I read, you know, years ago, both of these had moments that just caused me to hysterically laugh. While there are a lot of really hilarious moments, obviously, I think that I just really appreciated these more candid discussions about these serious topics, because I think it's just, you know, relatable, and I think it's really important to see these kind of represented. This was fantastic overall. Like, I highly recommend you know, this particular collection, as well as Hyperbole and a Half. Both of them are fantastic, and like I said, the art style is so goofy, and I just love it so much. Alright, so that'll do it for today. You know, it's definitely a shorter round this time. I feel like I just don't tend to read as many books in these particular genres. You know, like, obviously, highly recommend all of these that I've mentioned today because they're just fantastic. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or think you might pick them up. For your question of the day, what comics make you laugh? So I do have a Discord channel, and if you want to join that, the link is in the description below. I hope you're all having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.